Rainbow Dash opened her eyes with a start, and Cheerilee immediately filled her almost entire field of vision. Rainbow tried to go on the offensive straight away, but she found she'd been securely chained up against a small, vertical wall of sorts. Her wings had been forced through some slits inside the wall, and she cringed in pain as she tried to move them. It felt as if some pony had driven hooks or nails through the fleshy parts. Rainbow didn't even need to guess who that had been. "Just in time for the main event," Cheerilee said, while a sly smile played on her lips. "Buck you! What have you done to Pinkie Pie?" The spiffy Pegasus spat back at her, leaning forward into her bindings as best she could, and putting on her most warlike face. My, you have a dirty mouth on you," Cheerilee said as she stepped aside. "Don't worry, we'll take care of that. As for your friend..." Dash could finally look past the other mare, and she gasped for breath. Pinkie Pie was tied to a table just a meter or two away. One side of the table had been elevated slightly, to ensure that Rainbow Dash had a good view. The pink pony had been gagged as well, but from the look in her eyes, Dash could tell she was scared. It's hard to giggle at anything with something like that in your mouth, she supposed. She noticed that there was a far smaller cage hanging from the ceiling, behind Pinkie, but it seemed to be empty. "Let her go. Now!" Rainbow hissed at Cheerilee through clenched teeth. "Oh, soon enough, soon enough," Cheerilee assured her as she rummaged through the insides of the saddlebags laying nearby. "Can't say she'll necessarily be in one piece, though." "You... let me guess. Monster?" Cheerilee finished the sentence for her as she turned around, a syringe filled with a brightly colored green substance in her hooves. "I heard that one from your friend Applejack already. You weeds really need some original material." "You better not have hurt Applejack, or I'm going to ram my hoof down your face." "Cute," Cheerilee said lightly, tapping the needle of the syringe with her free hoof. "Now, hold still." Rainbow Dash fought against her bonds, but in truth, she didn't have much choice but to remain still as the needle drew near. Cheerilee roughly forced it into one of the Pegasus's legs, emptying its contents into her bloodstream, as Dash clenched her teeth with a grunt. "You ugly mule! What did you do to me?" Dash demanded to know. Cheerilee simply grinned as she stepped behind the Pegasus. "Let's play a game. I call it sacrifice." "Sacrifice?" Rainbow asked despite herself. She didn't get a reply right away. At least, not in the way she expected. Cheerilee was obviously doing something behind her back, and Rainbow didn't think it was anything good. She heard something click behind her, and she grunted as the hooks embedded into her wings suddenly started to pull backwards, until her wings were just about at the straining point. 2 ropes descended from the ceiling, dangling in front of Rainbow Dash's face. Cheerilee stepped back into view, brandishing a smooth knife. "It's quite simple, really. You'll be sacrificing things that are important to you, or... Cheerilee pressed her body up against Rainbow Dash's, whispering in her ear as she lazily dug or dragged the tip of the knife through the Pegasus's coat, without actually cutting. Or I take something Pinkie cherishes away from her instead." "You're sick!" Rainbow looked over Cheerilee's shoulder, and she met Pinkie's eyes. The pink pony seemed on the verge of tears, and was shaking her head violently. She was obviously trying to communicate something. But what was it? "Don't let her hurt me? Don't do this for me?" Dash closed her eyes and breathed out slowly. There really was only one option open to her. Only one way she could live with herself. "All right, I'll do it. But only if you let Pinkie go." Cheerilee licked her lips. "Excellent. I knew you wouldn't back down from a challenge. And of course, your friend can go, once you've sacrificed everything you hold dear." She cackled, causing Pinkie to whimper softly, and even Dash felt her blood go a little colder in her veins. Just tell me how the hay you want to do this, Dash hissed. She wiggled her nose for a moment, as she cursed her luck. Getting itchy at such a moment. Thought you'd never ask. Cheerilee grabbed hold of one of the ropes dangling in front of Rainbow Dash, and pulled. A shock of pain went through Dash's body, as the hooks in her right wing pulled back with the same force, causing her to let out a yelp in surprise. Cheerilee winked at her. This will be the price, for now. Your wings. No way, Dash stuttered, as cold sweat broke out all over her body. You can't make me give up those. I'm a Pegasus. I need to fly. The Wonderbolts. Looks like it's Pinkie's turn already, Cheerilee said cheerfully, as she turned towards the party-loving filly, and Dash could hear her friends' muffled cries. No, wait! I'll do it, Dash yelled. Just please. Don't hurt Pinkie. Well, aren't you ever the loyal friend? Cheerilee said mockingly, as she turned back around. She briefly tinkered with the chains, tying Rainbow Dash down, and they soon trembled and tumbled to the ground. The Pegasus was surprised for a moment, but realized soon enough that the hooks pulled her wings back, still effectively glued her to the back of the table. On top of that, Cheerilee was smart enough to stay well out of reach of her hooves, and Dash scratched her nose, almost without noticing. And her neck was getting kind of itchy as well. Well, chop chop, those wings aren't going to pull themselves off, you know, Cheerilee said as she took up position right next to Pinkie Pie, whom she started poking at with the tip of her knife, obviously meant as extra motivation for Dash. The Pegasus herself finally took hold of the rope with both of her shaking hooves, breathing in and out deeply in an effort to calm herself. She always prided herself on her loyalty, but that was really about to be put to the test. Not only was this likely to be incredibly painful, but she was about to give up something that had defined her every aspect of life until this day. She felt tears pricking up in the corner of her eyes, and for a moment, a dark part of her mind told her to just give up, to reconsider. But as she glanced at her friend, lying there, helplessly likely, with at least one broken leg and at the mercy of a bucking psychopath, she realized she simply had to do it, for her best friend. With a primal scream, Rainbow Dash pulled down hard on the rope, throwing all of her explosive power into this one desperate act. Her breathing stalled as pain exploded through her back and chest, and she felt some manner of bladed edge bite into the base of her wing, weakening it slightly as it tore away. Bone cracked and splintered, while whole bunches of nerves, endings, and flesh got pulled straight out of her back. Rainbow Dash screamed and screamed as the wing tore away, and continued to do so for at least a full minute afterwards. She finally stopped screaming, still panting and breathing heavily, tears and sweat streaming down her face, in tandem with the blood running down her back. See? That was nothing at all, she said shakily. Then, do the other one, Cheerilee said, clearly enjoying the show. Pinkie was crying silently as well, and she was still shaking her head. Right. I can do this. No problem. Just one more. Stupid wing. It doesn't even hurt at all. Rainbow broke into a nervous giggle as she grabbed the other rope. Oh, all right. She screamed again and pulled down with all of her might, but the rope slipped between her hooves, and the hooks still roughly pulled her flesh, ripping into her as the blade sliced into the base of her wing. Dash almost fell forward from the table, but quickly found that even with just one wing trapped, she was still securely locked in place. No way, the rainbow-maned pony stammered, in between her gasps for breath. Cheerilee raised an eyebrow. Again. Rainbow lifted her hooves towards the rope again, shaking like crazy, It had been relatively easy the first time. She hadn't known exactly what it felt like. The second time had been more difficult, and she could hardly stomach the thought of having to go through the pain again. But this time... No, I can't do it, Rainbow said as she burst into a waterfall of tears, her whole body shaking under her emotions and pain. At the same time, the itching flared up again, worse than before. It hurts. It hurts so bad. You have no idea. I can't do it. I won't do it. No! Cheerilee burst into laughter, and the unpleasant sound echoed throughout the room. Is this the limit of your loyalty? I should have known better than to expect anything from the likes of you, I suppose. She turned towards Pinkie, bending over as she readied the knife. Well, Pinkie, I'm afraid I have to take the thing from you that you hold most dear. Your smile. She ripped Pinkie's gag out of her mouth, and the pink mare's eyes filled with tears. No! Please no! Some pony, help me! Dash! Dashy! She yelled, desperately fighting against her bonds as best she could. Pain flared up through her body, as several broken bones protested. But the threat posed by Cheerilee's knife gave her strength to momentarily ignore these signals. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Dash sobbed, her eyes closed and her face turned away, covering her eyes with one hoof and scratching at her neck with the other. Cheerilee plunged forward, ramming the tip of the knife straight into Pinkie's cheek, blood bubbling up from both inside and outside of her victim's mouth. Pinkie screamed in pain, and soon regretted it as she cut her own tongue with the knife, causing her to panic even more. The teacher started to move the knife downwards, intent on making a neat cut down towards Pinkie's chin. But the struggling and screaming of the aforementioned made sure it was a messy cut at best. She tilted the blade slightly and cut under the bottom lip, grazing up against Pinkie's teeth and badly damaging her gums in some places, as blood dripped down her face. Ponyville's premier party pony screamed as Cheerilee dragged the knife up against her cheek on the other side. She turned the blade again and drove it through the flesh of Pinkie's upper lip and nose, connecting finally to the point where she had first plunged the knife in, ignoring Pinkie's cries and screams. She leaned in and bit down onto the Earth Pony's now disconnected upper lip, grabbing the jar she had stored Applejack's tongue in from underneath the table and dropping Pinkie's lips into them. Pinkie was crying profusely, and every tear only increased in pain as it rolled down the naked flesh of her now heavily disfigured face. Without lips, she was quite the monstrosity, especially with all the blood oozing out of her cheeks, tongue, and gums. Even Cheerilee felt a shiver run down her spine as she looked at her, but perhaps that was more of an artistic pride than true uneasiness. "Ah, cheer up," Cheerilee told her. "You just have a smile. Just give a smile. And perhaps you can still get a smile, too." "What do you say, Dashy?" The Pegasus, who had been hiding her face in her hooves ever since Pinkie started screaming, finally dared to open her eyes. As she slowly looked at her friend's face, Pinkie had a desperate, pleading look on her face, as if she really wanted some pony to tell her that it'd be okay. But the overall fact was nauseating at best. Dash felt herself go green, and with a sickening splatter, she emptied her stomach onto the floor, and Pinkie burst into tears once more. "Wow, you know you're ugly when even your most loyal friends can't look at you without throwing up," Cheerilee said, trying desperately not to burst into a fit of laughter again. No, it's not that bad. I was just surprised, Pinkie. I swear." Dash tried desperately, but it didn't sound convincing, even to herself. "Ooh, rare, I'm ugly," Pinkie sobbed, apparently not entirely used to speaking without lips yet. Dash didn't know what to say. What with pain, nausea, and an infernal itch clouding her mind. But Cheerilee quickly took that problem off her hooves. Well then, let's move on to the next step. Shall we? Next step? Rainbow Dash asked, as she tried to ignore the itch and the stabbing pain in her back. Cheerilee smiled wickedly. Seeing as you're not mare enough to pull through yourself, I'll just have to do the next one for you, she said as she started to undo the bindings that held Pinkie Pie in place, causing the pink mare to let out a flood of whimpering and only half-formed syllables. Wait! I didn't fail this round! You have to leave her alone! Dash screamed indignantly. She wasn't a stranger to cheating, but she still couldn't stand it when others did it, especially if they had been the ones to come up with the rules in the first place. Cheerilee finished opening up the last clasp, and Pinkie tried to escape by quickly rolling off the table. Her hooves touched the ground, and she let out a terrible shriek as her legs gave way beneath her. Dash swallowed. Apparently her friend had broken even more bones than she had originally thought. Hey! Are you listening? Cheerilee grabbed Pinkie by the hair and dragged her along the ground, ignoring her pleas and whimpers, as she threw the lipless pony into a cage, which hung a meter or so above the ground. Pinkie cried out in pain as she attempted to gain some sort of footing inside the cage, but her broken leg kept slipping off the bars, and her forelegs didn't have the strength to pull her up. As she walked towards the next lever in the cage, Cheerilee finally addressed Rainbow's questions. Oh, I'm playing by the rules. But I think that, after flying, the thing you hold most dear is Pinkie herself. She burst out into maniacal laughter as she pulled the lever into a neutral position, and the ground underneath Pinkie's cage slid open. Immediately, a plume of smoke rose up from the newly created pit, and Pinkie cried out unintelligibly as the heat wrapped itself around her. She looked down shakily, and immediately saw a raging river, a reserve of boiling water, which even Rainbow Dash could hear from her position on the other side of the room. You can't do this! You said you'd let her go if I pulled through, Rainbow Dash yelled, her pain and other discomforts momentarily forgotten. Cheerilee burst out into another bout of maniacal laughter. And you think you have? If she really means that much to you, come and save her! She abruptly pushed the lever down, opposite the position it had first been in, and the cage Pinkie was in started to descend slowly. Dash! Dash! Pinkie screamed, as she just tried to move herself to the door of the cage, which Cheerilee had left wide open. Her efforts proved to be quite vain, as there was simply no way she'd ever make it, even halfway, with her body in the condition it was in. She almost went green with pain, just trying to stand up. Rainbow Dash bit back her pain and fear, pulling all of her personal issues on hold. She hadn't known exactly what Cheerilee was capable of before, and her first run-in with pain of the magnitude had shocked her to the core. She had lost sight of her principles in a sea of pain and fear, but now they were playing for the marbles. Now Cheerilee was threatening to take something that really mattered to her, and Dash wasn't planning to let her get away with it. Not anymore.